Hello everybody, welcome, and thanks for watching. This might be quite a long video, and I always kind of ask the listeners or watchers and observers to really consider if they want to be present. For me, I'm all about sovereignty codes, freedom codes, and understanding the plethora that we have in terms of that which is outside of ourselves or perceiving the outside of ourselves that grab our attention. So I guess in these early moments, it would be good for me to chat about bullet points of what I'm going to be going through and chatting about. And essentially, it's a bit of a personal share that is linked to a love story to a certain degree. And obviously that which extends into and through my personal path, to truth and liberation and on my spiritual journey. And that which I am observing in the field right now, which is linked to false light stories and the unraveling of all creation stories in our now moments. And I guess before I do that, because I don't really know what's going to come out, I haven't prepared for this, I don't like to, I kind of like to just pop on and be as present as I can be. But I guess the content of this video may trigger some. And so I guess before I begin, I would just like to make a personal statement into the quantum field that that all beings that are watching this, feeling aligned, I send a prayer to really drop into your heart center and simultaneously ask that, I'm linked up with the guardian host teams, the Aurora Matrix, our guardian councils of the original 12 tribes, the Yani, the Unisai, Magi Kings and Queens, the Rainbow Dragons, and that I have no interference in this space. And this is a request from the one that I am, the all-being, Christ Avatar self, and so it is. So, dropping really into the content of this video, I think I'll begin with saying I received something this week, and it was a video, a 2.5 hour long video or podcast that was about a girl, a woman who had been through her own spiritual journey and on her path to liberation and to healing and to finding truth. And this was sent to me from the perspective of another who had gone through a psychotic episode, the second one within his reality. And essentially, after that psychotic episode, this individual's soul needed to go into a rehabilitation space that was not actually a psychological or psychiatric space. It was actually a drug rehabilitation center, which is really fascinating because that was not his issue. His issue was psychosis. And this particular rehabilitation space was very much centered around the Yahweh coding in terms of the story of Jesus and Yahweh from the Hebrew Kabbalah system. And so inevitably, I'm aware that many rehabilitation spaces would, of course, bring faith into a healing process. I guess, one at this stage would look at any process of healing, particularly, I guess, a shamanic space that I've been working in and a medicine space, and say, there's a certain amount of faith that is going into that as well. And so we're all working off of different models, and we're all working off of different creation stories. And so this particular rehab, that was the, I guess, the savior model. And I use that word very specifically because personally, I am not in agreement with these types of systems. I'm really all about empowerment, and I don't really have an agenda as to link you into my set of belief systems. What I am here to do is resonate at a certain frequency, hold strong, grounded, and centered to that which I am aligned to and believe in, which is the law of one. And through that, to embody the Christ and the energy of the Christ and that consciousness stream, that gestalt of consciousness, in order to sort of activate something within your heart, the deepest part of your consciousness, the seat of your consciousness, in order to facilitate a transformational experience that I am holding for you to then feel that aspect of oneness and unity, and to begin to re-pour love into yourself and to feel that as an embodied process within the self in order to transform. What belief systems you take away from that experience is not mine to dictate in any way, shape, or form, right? So that's kind of how I look at the healing process. But of course, we have a world where we have we have 8 billion souls on the planet, and each of us are creating in a different way. And so there are many ways and many institutions, whether we want to call them good or bad or helpful or unhelpful, that are there for us to link into and for our consciousness to have an experience through, in order to learn and grow and, transform and evolve. So this particular healing model, the savior model that I mentioned, would have fallen under this category of the Yahweh, Jesus, biblical story, which links into the Kabbalah tree of life. And those of you that are following Christic teachings or the freedom teachings, the Melchizedek cloister teachings, we are really linking into the Kathara grid, which is taking into consideration the other aspects of the tree of life that have been distorted and eliminated from the Kabbalistic tree of life, right? So we're speaking to the universal tree of life. And this particular individual ended up going to a rehabilitation space for 6 months, in this center for psychosis, which is bizarre, but, so we see how these psychiatric clinics, although I don't believe they are helpful either, but they are really, really being pushed at this time, over flooded with clients and no state funding. And I feel the staff there would probably not have the deepest gnosis in order to really come to an understanding of what psychosis is from a multidimensional perspective, from a soul fragmentation perspective, and particularly from the perspective of existentiality. What is happening here with the soul in accordance with the solar system within our time matrix? I don't believe those staff members have that kind of gnosis. So what I guess I'm pointing out is we have 2 sets of structures, and neither of them from my perspective, and again, please know that anything I say here is my conscious experience. It is how I have viewed through my lenses, through my heart and my soul, a particular storyline. This is really important. So, take what resonates and take what you can learn. And, you don't have to go with everything I say in any way, shape or form. But I'm just sharing the story because I think it is important, and I feel like I've kind of been holding on to this one for a while. And so, I began with saying that I got sent a video by this individual who had the psychotic break, who'd gone through a rehabilitation process in a drug rehabilitation space that was centered around religious teachings and the creation story through Yahweh and Jesus and the Bible. Now, the video that I got sent was a 2.5-hour podcast of this woman moving through her story of transformation and healing from the perspective of her consciousness, which we always have to consider, always. There is a different set of lenses, at every moment in observation of one's reality. And she was speaking deeply about the pitfalls or the dangers or the consciousness traps with regards to the New Age industry, all right? And this is really, this is such a powerful share for someone to come out with. What the continuation of that podcast spoke about was her, absolute abandonment of New Age spirituality into a calling within a particular church and moving into a process of deliverance through Jesus Christ, and is now, been saved by this process of deliverance, and her whole entire life has turned around. Which I'm grateful for any individual. But it was such an interesting podcast, and I actually used it as a teaching tool in the current coaching container that I am holding called the Azurite Temple. And it was so fascinating because when I sent it to everyone, I began to get feedback from people saying, I'm being really triggered by this video, and I don't believe that it's entirely correct, etc., etc. And I kind of just said to everybody, this is why I'm sending it, because each and every one of us at any point in time needs to recognize the other within the self. And we can sit in our container for 7 months and really go through such a bonding process with each other. And that bonding process creates safety for us. And that safety creates an opportunity for authentic expression. And it provides us with a platform to speak our truth. However, when we come out of that bubble and the coaching container is complete, or something dissolves, because the only thing constant is change, can you still feel safe? And also, if somebody within your holographic field comes into your space and begins to speak of something that is not aligned to your belief system, how do we handle this? Do you just push them away? Do you say, you may as well just back the fuck up there because I'm not interested, so boundaries are created? What is it that we do? And the reason I mention this is because we are in this space of witnessing a dissolution. The dissolution is happening through processes of war. And so I've been really observing this aspect of conflict, how within the microcosm, into the macrocosm, do we dissolve conflict? So from microcosm to macrocosm, these big sort of socio-political events. How do we do that? How does one do that? And of course, I can only answer for myself, as I have mentioned and will continue to mention, right? And I feel the process is to understand the nature of the universe. And that may seem like a profound answer, but I want to bring it into simplicity and say, we've got the law of one. And that may not be a structure or a belief system that has landed for you yet. It may not be something that ever lands for you. It may be something so absurd for you because you literally have never had the experience of unity in your life. As an example, I hope that you have. I hope that a beautiful lovemaking session has brought you to feel the field of resonance that is two human beings in one moment connected as one energetic pulse, right? I hope that you have felt that. I hope that you as a mother, when having your baby, suckling you or deeply cradled in your arms and listening to your heartbeat, that in those moments, there is only one, right? And those of you that have done psychedelics would have felt that resonance of the field of one. But then it kind of disappears and we forget about it, and we don't really think of this belief system as anything we need to live our day-to-day reality by. But I do, and so this aspect of a core belief of it is one is hugely a huge proponent in my field as a motivator, as a teacher and a guide. And so within that aspect of the one, I come to the conclusion that in order to dissolve and resolve all conflict, I must come to the inner standing that the other is me and I am the other. And that no matter what the belief system is, the religious stance, the potential crimes done, and that's difficult for me to say now because I know that there might be a lot of sort of chirps on the outside. Oh, so, you're okay with that kind of thing. I'm not, but this is me simplifying for the sakes of the video. One will never know what goes on in the consciousness of another person to the depth that one can explore in a video format. So, to observe the other as me and the one. And so within the coaching aspect, I said to the members of my coaching container, I said, be grateful for this trigger. Allow this trigger to bring up within you that which you are totally resisting in terms of the content that is being presented to you. So knowing that this group of people and individuals and myself are aligned to XY set of values that we call Christic values, and that essentially we are aligning to that which the Gestalt of consciousness called Christ consciousness, and really reconnecting into this grid system, a 12th dimensional grid system, to activate the DNA in order to remember and to be able to embody this Christ consciousness through the body, is what we're doing. And now when we're listening to the other in the podcast, we're listening to all these, I guess, aspects of her reality field where all of this new age stuff created danger for her, where the new age is hogwash, where the new age is love, light, and lightning, a bit of a disastrous experience. And now her moving into the story of the revelations of being saved by Jesus. And when you hear this podcast, I'll probably add a link below because that gives reference, and I think it's really fair, so that there's no real bias. You can watch and feel it for yourself. So from my perspective, when I watch her speak about Jesus and this process that she went through of deliverance, it still feels to me, because I feel like the feeling body is just such a great detector of things, and it felt to me like this individual is still speaking about Jesus as the man, as many people have this ideology of God being the man in the sky, right? And I think it's beautiful. I feel like it's beautiful, and how many people may have been saved or moved. Let's finish that sentence. How many people have been saved by Jesus, right? Beautiful, wonderful thing to happen in your life. But now I'm going to add a little bit more, because I feel that those people may have moved from one space and experience within their consciousness into another space and experience in their consciousness. And this new experience is now bringing you to the storyline of the creation story of Jesus Christ through the Bible. Nothing wrong with that. It is my belief that the soul at any point in time, it may or may not, but at any point in time, it is seeking to evolve, and it is forever seeking unification, right? And because our outside reality is not quite speaking to that unified field that Jesus would have preached about and taught about of unconditional love and oneness and kindness for all humanity, because that is not reflecting in our outside world, I believe these individuals will have a time within their reality construct where they will move into conflict again. And perhaps in that conflict, begin asking themselves again, is my story and my creation story with Jesus in unification with the truth, right? And it's obviously up to them where they go. They may stay steadfast in this story of the Bible and Jesus being the one and only Savior, the Son of God, and we wait in all this destruction for him to come down and be our Savior once again. What we need to understand is, I believe all spiritual text is a metaphor waiting to be decoded. And by saying that, we would inevitably in this point say that is open to interpretation through 8 billion souls, no matter what religious text it is. And that interpretation is then broken down into a belief system, or coming into a core belief system that then dictates our actions, And so we see the complexity and the simultaneous beauty of the unique nature of individualized consciousness experiencing source, God, or creation through its own filtration system of the mind, body, heart, and soul at the level of consciousness that they are at, based on their experiences, based on their resistance to learn or to want to change, right? And so our outside field now is reflecting this chaos within us, and it's kind of forcing us to change. There is nowhere to run, to hide, and to not look at what is happening. And so again, I believe many people, no matter which creation story they are in, are going to be in this space where they fall to their knees and they pray for the truth and answer, right? And please know that I am very aware that you may not consider my truth as the ultimate truth. I am aware that what I am moving through now in terms of the Christic teachings and the values of Christ consciousness is also a creation story that I am experiencing now. And where it becomes interesting is the similarities. So I would say I'm working with Christ consciousness energy. A more religious person would say they are working through the Bible with the story of Jesus, right? I would refer to Jesus as Yeshua, right? Knowing that the Yeshua I speak of is a 12-strand activated DNA ascended master, a true ascended master, right? A unicy. Okay? This Jesus, this man Jesus, I don't believe anyone within a religious context, or very few, have explored the story from the Bible and the man that we call Jesus beyond that, right? And what makes us begin to question the story beyond that? I think the simple answer is an expanded consciousness, a inquiry and curiosity, a childlike inquiry and curiosity to continue asking beautiful questions yet powerful and profound questions about reality. So if we've got our book and we've got our man, we can begin asking, how what are the stars? Are we the only galaxy? Are there more galaxies, etc., etc., etc.? And I feel like once we begin to start looking at the planetary system within a solar system, we begin to ask bigger questions around our existence. And that space brings us into the beginning stages of beginning to think in a quantum way. And once we begin to think in a quantum way, we bring everything back down to energy. So this is what would differentiate an energy worker from, someone that's just kind of got a religious background, a very humble and religious background. So we start looking at energy. The moment we look at energy, we look down to atomic structure. The moment we look down to atomic structure, and we think of creation energy, we start thinking of consciousness itself. Right. So I get sent this video through this individual friend of mine who had a psychotic break. Prior to this break, we would have been speaking the same language, resonating in the same field, understanding the ineffable nature of creation through the identification that it is all consciousness, that we are the creators. And by we, I mean all, right? And this is why our commitment to have pure thoughts and kind hearts is so important, because we are creating the whole thing. And of course, when you go into creation stories, you're going to say, well, when did we get here? How do we get here? And so we start looking at galactic history. And when we're looking at galactic history, we start going back 950 billion years ago, or million years ago, right? 950 million years ago. And if you have a spiritual nature, that which is seeking, information with regards to ancient civilizations and that which exists beyond our sphere of experience through our senses, ETs and other entities and beings and other civilizations on different star systems and things. And so you begin to bring galactic history in, and the moment you bring galactic history in, you've got this beautiful merge of quantum mechanics, and we've got understanding our multidimensional nature through psychedelics, and we have a basis of spiritual teachings through meditation and fasting and all of these beautiful things. We're understanding our body and we're feeling energies moving through, and then we have a psychotic break. This psychosis is going to bring an individual into a space where the entire operating system is opened up and a flood of data is coming in. And when I mean flood, I mean you are being flooded with data. In fact, from that galactic historical perspective, I would view that as a hijacking of a system that is beginning to open up, or now wide open, that is being recognized as open, is flooding and streaming data in, but the individualized consciousness is not able to hold that data and embody the frequencies of that data, right? Because it's happening so fast and all of a sudden. And they are also simultaneously incapable of any process of embodiment because of it's happening so fast. And they also they're kind of missing an element of their individualized consciousness. So it's like a consciousness hijack in that moment. And in that hijacking moment, they're experiencing the most extraordinary things. And I could pretty much put my head on a block and say, if we did a documentary and we took data from all the psychiatrists across the planet. And we had just a simple questionnaire that asked, do patients that move through psychosis experience these things, these top 5 things, And I could pretty much guarantee you that all of those things will be marked off as a yes from most psychiatrists. I'm not going to go into them, or I may as well, let's say, illusions of grandeur, meeting with deities, entities, gods, goddesses, sort of clandestine rescue missions to rescue Earth, secret sort of amulets or jewels or crystals or tools that are being given to only you because you are the special savior, and these sorts of things, right? I believe that I would love to kind of get that research. I would love to get that research. Anyway, this is my belief system. So, all of this data is coming through, and what that does is expose the consciousness to its multidimensional nature, right? And without any training of the nervous system and a smooth and sovereign accessing of your multidimensionality, which is what embodiment is about, sovereign embodiment, right? A slow and conscious process of beginning to receive all parts of yourself multidimensionally from across all timelines and dimensions into the now moment in 0 point field. Quantum access to all parts of your evolved soul. So we have the soul, the higher soul, the monad and the avatar self. So this is meant to be a lifelong process, right? And of course we have spikes and peaks in energetic frequencies coming into the planet more and more and more, particularly on equinoxes and solstices, and these are big ritual days. And so we have these big spikes, but we are doing daily practice. But when you have an opening of your energetic field in such a manner, this can be an absolutely destructive experience and absolutely traumatic experience for the soul. And I have every understanding of why the Western medical space puts these people on medication, because if you're going to start talking about aliens and dragons and angelics and the Buddha and Jesus came down to give you a special message of hope and all of this, Western medicine is going to look at that and be like, we're just going to put you in this bed and, we're going to reprogram you until you fit back in. And that's a whole nother video completely. So we have my friend go through this, and from that big experience, more trauma unfolds from my perspective. What I'm speaking to is, and I'm giving you the full details here so that you have meaning and context, right? So more trauma unfolds from my perspective. First thing is that, this individual unfortunately ended up going to a state hospital. Through the psychotic break, there was an altercation in which an opportunity displayed itself through that altercation to go into hospitalization and rehabilitation without needing to pay medical bills, which would immediately put that under a state hospital. And in this particular country where this happened, it's not entirely a space where you want to be under the state. And because of the altercation, there was now a police file opened, and a charge was put against this individual. And so not only is this person now going through the insane experience of multidimensionality, opening up the chakras, experiencing all of this, there has also been an altercation, which is not something that would have been a primal intention, or the prime intention of this soul at all. This person's heart is really, really soft and really, really kind. But when fight and flight and adrenaline is rushing through you, and you are experiencing multiple dimensions and realities at any one point in time for more than a period of 3 days, with no sleep, no shower, no food, because you're just in another reality, then you can imagine the amount of adrenaline driving through. So in this now state hospital, this particular individual is not only going through that, but he is also handcuffed, one arm and one foot on the hospital bed. Right? I believe, I'm not entirely sure, but it is customary for there to be at least a 21-day process. So let's call it a 4-week process, in order for psychiatry to, check them out and move them into the next institutional phase of their rehabilitation and recovery. Because so many people are moving into soul fragmentation through psychotic episodes, the beds are full. And I know this to be true for the current space I'm in as well, in the country that I'm in at the moment, because I've been speaking to certain social workers, and there's just no space anymore for these people. And unfortunately as well, those workers on the ground, that are there to help are really struggling. And I have no doubt that they would be, because again, much like I mentioned about Western medicine, they cannot link into this storyline at all. This person in front of them just seems stark raving mad, absolutely demonic, and out of their goddamn minds, right? And so not having the next institutional space to go into because there were no beds available, my dearest brother ends up moving through a prison system as well, just temporarily. Now you can imagine that, and also at this point in time being put on a lot of medication that is moving through an extremely pure body, right? A very, very pure and clean body. And now we've got these toxins running through, changing the brain chemistry and the neurological space. And please know that I do have respect for Western medicine being used at certain points in time. I understand their requirements, particularly when you can't just whisk someone off to the perfect place and space for rehabilitation, which I would love to create. But, I am also here experiencing the time-space continuum in the way that I am, and I hope to get there one day. So, then moving through a prison system, and from the prison system, exiting into the rehabilitation space, drug rehabilitation space, with this Yahweh faith that is used as a tool to help their clients move through their addiction processes or healing. For this individual, he was just there for needing a 6-month stability of somewhere to stay, somewhere that is safe, somewhere that is regimented, and where his body can begin to heal and his mind and his psyche can begin to return to quote unquote normal. Just a quick interruption. I am so sorry. I'd like to take this moment to thank you for watching and being present in this content. And if you're liking this content, please would you help me with the algorithm? I think censorship is on the rise, and these kind of discussions and perspectives are important. So if you have capacity to do so, the will, want, need, and desire to join your energetic frequency into this kind of material, please like, subscribe, share, and do whatever this particular social channel requires of you. The second thing that I have as a request is to check out the link below with regards to the Azurite temple. If you are enjoying this type of inquiry into the nature of reality and your consciousness, then the Azurite temple is coming up to launch in April, and it would be an absolute honor to have you join in this 7-month container. Thank you so much. Back to the video. Cheers. Right, so that's kind of the background story. What's really fascinating about this is that obviously doing the work that I do, I believe that I am aware of exactly what happened. And that is what I'm going to speak to today. And I'm going to link this in with the video of the link that I'll put below that got sent to me by my dear friend. And there were no other words involved in when he sent it to me. And I said, you know, you've gone through a really big experience. I was kind of kicked out of your space during your healing crisis. And I have every understanding why, because I would be perceived as the witch. I would be perceived as the one that has brought this demonic state upon you from the reference point and the perception of your family members who are very, very deeply committed to the faith of Christianity and to the house and church of God through his Savior and Son, Jesus, right? Extremely religious. So I would obviously be the scapegoat to all issues surrounding this family's son. And knowing the work that I do and the shadow worker that I am, and those of you who know me, I often say I'm a professional bear poker. I am in understanding that these processes can happen. And I am in understanding, my perceived understanding of what occurred. And so I'll explain it now from the New Age perspective. What occurred is an accumulation of trauma that was still sitting in the body from the first psychosis and medication period. Because remember, when you put someone on medication, it completely numbs you of all feeling. And I know this from a decade of working in this space and having this being said to me. It completely numbs you of all feeling, right? And so you have a psychosis, which is inevitably your traumatic experience based on what I've just said. You then go on to medication for however long it is. This completely shuts you down into numbness. So there are no feelings. You're just in quote unquote neutrality, but you know, which we all kind of strive for in spirituality, is this neutrality from duality into the oneness. But it's a superimposed neutrality brought along by medication and subduing you, you know, and suppressing it all. Then you come into a space of further healing and you move off of your medication. And of course, the senses become alive again. Everything becomes alive again. You start feeling better. You're more energized. You start doing exercise. You start swimming. You start meditating. You start feeling this chi rising up in you again. Your life force energy. So the body says amazing. The spirit says amazing. The consciousness says amazing. And it says, you're ready to now release this trauma. And it's sitting there at the base of the spine. And if you're doing a certain set of practices that we would, for this video, call New Age practices, you have a potential, and your body is now pure. It's clear. You haven't been drinking. You haven't been smoking. You're not in a workplace environment because you haven't been able to have a job because you've had psychosis, and you're now coming into your own again, your feeling body. And you happen to be doing work with someone like me. I am an activator. I am sort of like an Akashic record holder, that when I am around you and I am speaking and I am vibrating and I am being myself, I am going to activate memory, a memory system within you that is in recognition of that which I am saying. And this recognition system sets off a sequence of events that begins to ripple and affect through your body and move you through a cycle of activation and further awakening. Whether you were unawakened to coming into your awakening, or you've already been on the path and we're moving through higher or different levels of our consciousness experience, right? So I'm going to basically light a fire up your ass, you know, for lack of a better word. It's you know, I'm saying it's part of my job, but it's also part of my being. It's not like I'm intentionally trying to convert and activate every person I meet. I just have to be me, right? And so when you're doing that with me and you've come off of the meds and you've had these big experiences, and these big experiences, and by those I mean psychosis, I often and really truly believe that these individuals have a very, very, very open energetic system, or a very sensitive energetic system, you know. And again, without the, you know, I've always had a passion for all things esoteric in nature, and it's brought me to huge places of research and commitment and dedication along my path to truth. Many of these people, from what I can see, and again, this part of the having a survey sent to psychiatrists would be interesting, because I believe a lot of people that experience psychosis, not all, obviously there's a law of averages, but I believe a lot of these people would not have had this initial kind of flair for anything other than their earthly experience. And so when those channels open and they start having these multidimensionally activated experiences, whether they are false light or not, they didn't come from a training basis of strengthening the auric field, cleansing your field from all trauma, having done ancestral work, looking into your belief systems around religion and dogma and all these things. I just feel that a lot of these people don't have that. And this is what's so fascinating from my perspective, is like that soul spark is always there to ignite at some point and be like, hey, you know, you may think you're an insurance salesman, but actually you're a fucking interdimensional being that has always existed as consciousness itself, right? And, you know, so I was kind of cast as this instigator within the second psychotic experience, because my friend started, you know, reconnecting with me. So it was that kind of this like 3-year break while he was healing from the first psychosis and coming off the meds, and then he came back into my field, and this beautiful heart experience with each other, coming back into my field, and me beginning to do what I do, and that's to light that fire. What's important at this point is to mention, I am wise enough within my training at the time that this happened, and I'm grateful for this, that and based on the nature of my work, I have to work with strong contracts. And those contracts speak to aspects around sovereignty and consent. All right? So whether you are my friend or my client or a partner or whatever it is, I am inevitably going to ask you for consent when it comes to the big stuff, particularly if I know you are sensitive. And so with the story of my friend, this dear individual, I know there is a sensitivity. I already know there's been a trauma. I already know there's been a psychosis. I know there's been meds. I know there's been suppression through the medication. And now I see this coming alive and back online, moving through this person. I am very heart-centered. He is very heart-centered. We love each other. We respect each other. There is so much honor between each other. So we're activating everything, right? And this beautiful flow of energy beginning to emerge. I'm overseas at this point in time, so we are communicating digitally, and I keep saying, please just go slow, keep grounding. And you know, this path is also lonely. If I'm going to go into a meditation or something, I'll say, hey, do you want to meditate with me? And I always said with this individual, do you consent? I would love you to hold space for me. Do you consent? I would love to do a meditation. I'm going to go into a breath work. Would you hold space for me? Do you consent? Beautiful. I'm observing, keep saying, please keep grounding. I'm going to be home soon and we can go through some trauma release, right? Because now all of this life force is coming up, coming through and in and out and all around. It's got to go somewhere. And it's got to first go through the body. And before I was able to come home into the space of human contact with this individual and begin doing deeper somatic release work, another psychosis happened, right? And so I mentioned the family really being resistant towards me because, of course, I am the shaman, I am the medicine woman, I am the witch, I am the esoteric one. And within esotericism, we are dealing with all things other than Jesus, and we are dealing with all symbols and representations that are outside of the self, which can be true. So for example's sake, you know, crystals and having the sage and lighting a candle and all of these things. And I love that about the fundamentalist aspects of faith is like the kingdom of God resides within. That is it. If you don't got your crystal, girl, if you don't have a match to light your candle and you don't have that sage, can you shine and light that candle within? I know that I can. I've done the training. And I know that I will be challenged again in order to come through the inside and light that king, you know, light my outside kingdom from my inner kingdom. But if you're just going to cast judgment upon me and put me in the category of new age, and you know, the whole family's gone through trauma, you're obviously not going to wait for me to share that information. I also am wise enough, intuitive enough, and psychic enough to know to step away. I am also aware of contracts and boundaries, and this contract is with this individual. He's now in a system where I am unable to communicate with him, and essentially what happened was all communication was shut down, and to a degree I felt like my friend possibly felt that I had abandoned him, you know, because the family had requested that and kind of blocked me out. And so it was really intense and really, really sad for me as well, because it's a deep, very, very deep relationship that I was engaging in with this person, and someone that I've known for 9 years at that point in time, and someone to a degree that I had always been in love with, actually. And through our digital time together, this was like, I know this may seem unhealthy as fuck, but like, you know, it was like 4 hours, 5 hours a day online with each other and talking and just sitting and meditating and whatever, you know, just reconnecting after these 3 years of not having communicated. But it, you know, moving to this 9-year cycle. And so a lot happened, and I'll get, you know, I kind of stick with me or get lost in this, and by get lost as in not get lost and fuck off, but like just flow with me here. But you know, a lot of trauma was experienced by this person. And I get left holding the space, which I'm capable of doing. And I look through the contract, and what I begin to see is I have created it all. So, you know, my other videos, I talk about this dragon body and the God creator energy. And when you're in that energy of understanding you're the programmer, you begin to say, okay, cool, I take accountability and responsibility for creating it all, right? Why did I create it in my reality? At the same time, I am going through the Christic teachings, which inevitably, I mean, there's a lot of information there, but inevitably this is going to bring you to a space of questioning the life and story of the man that people call Jesus, who I would call Yeshua. And we begin to look at, you know, false ascended master holographic inserts, and we begin to look at inversions and hijacking of stargates and of systems within the universe that are misaligned and running off of incomplete or incorrect mathematical ratios that are leading in and out of false or quote unquote false black hole and wormhole systems that inevitably are creating our system, which if we really look at it, we're like, this is a pretty distorted space that we are in. People kill each other for nothing. Children are being raped. There are pedophile rings among the most famous leaders. It's a pretty distorted world. And so when you look at that, you begin to, along with the history, you can begin to say, okay, well, and along with the expansion of your consciousness, you can begin to say, okay, cool, well, what is this reality? And so we go back in history as well, and we start to look at our original genesis, and we begin to see the fall of the angelics, right? So we've got the fallen angelics, the story of the Nephilim wars, right? And we bring in the Anunnaki, and you bring in all of your consciousness experience, and you start looking at what's right in front of you. A man and a woman, the woman who happens to be one that involves herself in a certain level of spiritual work, and the quest to find liberation and truth through ascension teachings and mechanics, right? So absolute embodiment. I'm interested in reality, consciousness, constructs. So we have that woman, and we've got this man, beautiful man. Man and woman love each other beautifully, etc., etc. Woman believes at this point in time, holy shit, she has found her one. I mean, the energy that I felt with this particular person, I've never in my life. I felt that it was two avatar energies, like ascended master energies, coming into union in what our Christic family would call a hieros union, right? So this is what I'm feeling energetically, and I can feel it because that's my job. I feel, that's what I do. I feel energy. I read energy, and it's bigger than I've ever experienced anything. And I can see us as the size of mountains and planets, and I can feel our energy together. And based on our mutual experiences together, energetically, this storyline of hieros union is beginning to make sense to me. And then we have a crash and burn of a nervous system. So I brought in the story there of the Nephilim wars, you know, and going through all of this history. I brought in beginning to understand who the Christ is in all of this. Why is there so much distortion? And I'm beginning to look at my reality as a simulation that is presenting because of a distorted mathematic and geometric structure that is creating all this war and chaos. And because I've gone through all of that information, I now look at what's right in front of me and I go, okay, responsibility and accountability. I've created this situation. Why? Well, one, I'm a teacher. I share my gnosis, right? And I don't want to detract from anything else that I am. I like that label as teacher because I love to share, and I love how the exchange is, but one can become very codependent on that label. Anyway, I am all things, but right, so I'm a teacher, and this experience that I had with this beautiful friend of mine basically is the textbook from my perspective of what I am learning within galactic history. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, from the observation and the research that I have done, one must experience something for oneself in order for the teaching to land. It has to be experienced, right? And I feel that this was my opportunity to experience what distortion is, how a consciousness becomes hijacked, what false ascended master and false archangelic energy is, how that relates to 4D, so the fourth dimensional astral bliss, how we get trapped in those stories of astral bliss, how this astral bliss is very much linked to the love and light new age teachings, right? Which I knew about before. I know there is false light dribbled in everything and everywhere. It's a tricky maze. You know, how one can move to belief systems and how the mind can trick one into believing that they have reached some sort of nirvana or state of being that is that far surpasses all normal beings, and they are the Holy One and the Chosen One. And how because of this experience through my friend being me, because he is me, showing me how this works, how your nervous system gets attacked, how religious doctrine would view your Kundalini awakening and this shadow work experience as demonic. How I, from my perspective, view the religious aspect as demonic because I link the religious aspect to the Vatican. And to me, the Vatican is the darkest entity in physical manifestation on the planet, linked to higher dimensional gestalts of consciousness that have been in control for a long time, like the Anunnaki, etc., etc. Right? And so this is the fallen angelic structure, and we're living in it. I mean, if this is heaven on earth, then that's an interesting concept. And please know, I know I'm a creator, and I know we are very capable of creating new earth timelines, and we are already doing so. But to continue in this story. So this was a textbook example for me because on the one side, I'm being shut out, being told that my energy is, quote unquote, distorted this individual and created this for him. So I've just said I take responsibility and accountability for all creations in my experience, but I ask why they are there. And I believe this experience happened for me in order to observe that which I am reading, particularly around the false story of Christ. And how when I watched the healing process, every time that my friend got prayed over by the brothers and sisters of the church, he had another outrageous, the response was an attack to those people. Now, my belief system would be we have an open energetic center, so there is multidimensional seeing. And I mean, again, this is my perspective, right? I could say, well, I believe this individual is seeing demonic entities cruising around the brothers and sisters of the church, and they've got the Bible there, which I link to the Vatican, etc., etc., etc. And so this is why he's freaking out. And they would say he's freaking out because the demonics that he's, or the demonic energy that he's been working with is now coming out, right? So, and to simplify it all, we could also say from the healer's perspective, saying, it doesn't matter what's coming out, but it's coming out. It has been suppressed through 3 years of antipsychotics and antidepressants, right? It has been completely suppressed. Nowhere along the line have we done trauma work regarding the first psychosis. And again, if you can think of psychosis, any of you that have been in a little bit of a tough situation in, a medicine space where you're like, is this ever going to end? I'm in the darkest pits of hell. I don't know if I'm alive or dead. I need saving now. Like, you can imagine that in an extended state is it's intense. You've got to integrate all of that. You've got to integrate all of that. Possibly being visited by spaceships and aliens and higher dimensional beings, whether they come as the Christ or the Buddha himself or not, it doesn't, and whether it is the true Christ or not, it doesn't matter. You have got to integrate that in this earthly plane. And that takes a long time. And if you've been suppressing that, and also you've got this whole suppression of sexual energy, you haven't had sex for 3 to 4 years, you've been completely celibate. Now you're in communication with one that you are loving, or these centers are opening. You're loving through the heart space. There's a reuniting of two beings. So these sexual centers are going to open. And so all of this energy is going to push up. And so we've got this conflict arising, And I mentioned in the beginning, giving this video that got sent to me by my friend about this woman who had her deliverance from the New Age into the Savior of Jesus and the Bible, and how I sent this to my coaching container and how it was triggering them. And I never quite finished the sentence about half an hour ago or 40 minutes ago, but to link back into that was saying to them, feel it. Because we have to begin to understand that this psyche and how we experience reality is going to be unique to everybody else, and everybody's experience is unique. And until that information lands, that every single soul is going to experience something different through their lenses, we are not going to grasp how to come into unity with each other. Truly, we won't. So I'll put a pause there and actually have a sip of water. Give me a sec. So we come to this now moment. I received this video from my dear friend who I have not spoken to much. He came out of the rehab space. Obviously, I know that there has been a complete indoctrination happening through having read the facilities, how they anchor in their teachings through this Yahweh matrix. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, of course, my friend's consciousness, my friend's soul, and his consciousness has chosen to come into this experience where he's going to move through absolute indoctrination, from my perspective, into this false, what I deem as false information, based on historical information about the Christos mission and Yeshua, 12-strand DNA Yeshua. Of course he's going to go there and now completely, through trauma, be re-indoctrinated in an already fragile system that has already been hijacked, to come into rehabilitation into a false timeline, for lack of a better word, in this moment. And of course he's going to come out, or I guess I was waiting, and I now have the answer, right? But I had no doubt that he would come out as quite a transformed, what would you call it? Disciple of Jesus and the Bible. And please know, at no moment am I mocking in any way, shape, or form. Not in any way, shape, or form. There is absolute respect, absolute honor, absolute respect and honor. No mocking. So he steps out of the space. I slowly come back in because I've been kicked out, right? And I want my brother to know, like, listen, I was there, but I got kind of kicked out, right? And through me picking the highest timeline potential, I didn't want to confuse an already fragile psyche. I wanted to honor and respect the family's wishes as well, which wasn't said in so many words that I should back off, but it was understood. And again, this is the life of the shadow worker, because anyway, full stop. That's the life of the shadow worker. We trigger and then we've just got to hold space, right? And so he'd come out of the space and it's very, after psychosis, hospital, handcuffed to a bed, prison, and then a drug rehabilitation center, which isn't even the right space you're supposed to be. That's quite a fucking epic journey. And in fact, this being and I were actually on a path to potentially moving into, a spiritual marriage with each other. So I mentioned, this hijacking of his system, etc., etc. I didn't quite speak to how it pertains to my reality. Now you have a strong medicine woman, one that is a seeker of truth, one that is a speaker of truth as much as she is capable of within her current station of identity, at her current level of consciousness, right? I am a warrior of light. I am a peace bearer. I am a wisdom keeper. I am a guardian. I shift. I activate and I create. I hold a lot of power. So to turn my world upside down as well is something that can very easily occur with someone on my path, especially because of where we are at right now in our experience, especially because of where we are at right now in our experience. I too will quote unquote be attacked, okay? And I say attacked. Remember, I've also said I've created this all to experience. I've created it all to learn. I've also mentioned how the mind plays a role and thinks that this was a Hieros-Gamma union, which to some degree I still do. Only because I've never experienced any other energy that potent from the perspective of two individuals, masculine and feminine. I don't believe it is Hieros-Gamma anymore, which is in contradiction to what I just said, but I don't believe it is that anymore. But I know that there is a soul bond between the two of us that I cannot explain, and the only way I can explain it is we have chosen each other to learn the polarity of creation through each other. So this kind of union I felt was like broken up because it wasn't indeed correct for me, which blows my fucking mind, because I don't even know then what type of size of energy the weight of the energy, the sheer source point, right? I don't even know what that would feel like if it wasn't him, because that was huge. It was huge. And so I guess I'm sharing about consciousness traps here. Anyway, so I then received this video from my dear friend, knowing he's been through a whole indoctrination process, knowing that I'm still holding the space, knowing that I'm strong, centered, and grounded, and knowing that this person has gone through an extensive, exquisite, excruciating shift of consciousness, and that I don't have verbalization from this being of where he is at in his belief systems until I got sent this video with no other words in it. So, you know, this video speaks to the dangers of false lights, etc., and you know, and people's story of deliverance through Jesus. And I just said to him, you know, I said, thank you for the share. It's a beautiful teaching. But what is your intention? Are you wishing to reconnect with me? Do you wish to communicate with me? Do you wish to use this content as a discussion? Do you have questions around this content? Is this a projection? Is it an insult to the work that I do? Because one would call my work quite new agey. You know, to some, I don't call it that. I don't call it that at all. But you could certainly, if you didn't know any better, put me in that category. You know, is this an insult? Is it a warning? What is this? You know, I can understand the content, but I want to know from you, where are you at? So you're sharing with me the story of deliverance through Jesus Christ. I would assume, but it's never good to assume, that this is where you're at, and you found validation through others on the internet that have experienced the same thing, the dangers of New Age spirituality. And what I said to him was, you know, I just want to know where you're at in your belief system. That's it. I'm not here to change it. I'm not here to, you know, deliver you back to this system and that system and that system. No. And what I also said was, you know, I too am working with the Christ energy. I too am working with the Holy Trinity. My language is different. My language is different, but I am working with Christ consciousness. And I said, the man you refer to as Jesus is the man I refer to as Yeshua. The man you refer to is a consciousness gestalt that I am working with. I don't know what your Holy Trinity is, but to me, it's Cosmic Mother, Divine Cosmic Mother, Divine Cosmic Father, and the Christed Holy Child, or Angelic Child, right? Which to me brings in ancestral healing of the mother lineage, the father lineage, and inner child work, self-parenting, all of these aspects of New Age, right? And I also said to him, I know that danger exists within New Age spirituality. I am aware of that. Which is precisely why, and I reminded him, precisely why every time we did anything energetic with each other, I mean, any interaction is an energetic interaction, but let's say deeper work, every time, as annoying as it got, because I know your soul sensitivity, I asked for consent. And this is the difference, is that I don't have to sit in guilt and shame from the projection of the family of I'm the witch that may have activated this Kundalini, although there's an aspect in me that knows that my energy was part of that Kundalini, trauma release, whatever you want to call it, right? But I don't feel guilt or shame for it, because at each step of the way, I'm working in accordance with the laws of the universe and a law of structure, which allows me to dive deep into the values, Christaic values, on the Christos mission, in accordance with the Emerald Order and the freedom teachings of the Melchizedek Blue Rays, right? And perhaps that's a mouthful, perhaps that's a mouthful, but that is my reality construct. And my story of Yeshua is going way deeper than just the story of the man. We're working with consciousness and allowing that aspect of the Holy Spirit to move through me and to become the Christ, not in egoic construct, but through my heart, through a smile, right? And so now how do we dissolve conflict? So we've come into the space where he's been like, look, B, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this. And I said to him, I've always been aware of it. Remember, I've said to you that love and light is dangerous. Do not follow the light from that perspective, because what I do is actually shadow work. Okay? So that's always been mentioned. And what's fascinating about him and I is we always come back to each other. So there's always something that is seeking integration, because he wouldn't be in my field because I have a strict commanding of space. But I'm also the programmer, and I love to observe what comes into my field in order for me to learn from. And so I feel the new chapter that's coming in is this interesting opportunity to observe how I may need to restrict myself in further communications and conversations with him, if I am able to do that and want to do it, and if it feels authentic in divine right order for the highest timeline for me to do that. If I can just shine my heart and be silent, without needing the fancy words and the metaphysical, conversations around universal tree of light and activating 12 strands of DNA, which gets you to Christ consciousness, which allows you to become the Christ himself. He is in the space of his truth is in one book, the Bible, and in one man, Jesus. And that's a beautiful simplification. Do I believe the story will fall flat at some point? Yes, I do. For many reasons. And I may as well mention some. Why do I believe that story will fall flat at some point? Well, one, because this individual has already expanded his consciousness, so much so to have experienced an ineffable, an indescribable quantum, galactic, and multidimensional experience. He's already experienced that. You do not forget that. You can suppress that, but you do not forget that. So that's the one reason. Number two, I still happen to be in your field. And whether I say anything or not, that Christ light and energy moving through me is more than likely going to begin to, you know, light that little spark that I spoke of, right? The other reason is we're going through a planetary shift that is, you cannot ignore, you cannot look away, and we're in a sort of end time space, revelations space. The other reason is you have a strict doctrine and faith now that is a personal relationship with the Christ, and through that there is an inevitable frequency of prayer being emitted, of heart being emitted, and I said personal experience with Christ, so taking religion out of it, but I mean it's part and parcel of it. Like I said, to me, the moment you're going to be in that, I'm linking the Vatican in. For him at this stage, he's not linking that in. You know, he knows about that, but he's committed to the Christ and Jesus, and I get that. And so we speak to language and definitions, and is your Christ the same as my Christ? Are they the same? You know, so again, how do we coexist with one another in different creation stories without feeling like we're going to harm each other or distort each other or kill each other? You know, I mean, it's we've been doing that for centuries over our faith and religion. And I feel the answer is just, it's just such kindness. It's such heart that I feel like if you were sitting in a room with the other, that no matter the belief system, you can feel the kindness from that person. And you can feel the earthly nature and the humility that that being has for you, the person sitting opposite them. And if only we could get to this point with one another where if someone needs a sip of water, that we can pour them a cup of water. And that if someone needs a hug, that we are not afraid of denying our faith or being sinners of our faith because we're hugging the quote-unquote enemy or in the same room as the enemy. Because what are we doing in this ascension timeline? It's a full rehabilitation of that which is fallen angelic into unification with Source through the Holy Trinity of Mother God, Father God, and the Christed Child, right? And we just have to honor that each of us is in a different creation story. And the most perplexing thing is that I believe that almost everyone believes that their story is the ultimate. Because I can say to you right now, honestly, I truly, truly, truly believe that my story will be able to help another. And I say that because I don't want to gaslight myself through this that I'm learning. And I also say that because I'm observing my reality from the aspect of the programmer and the creator. And with my gnosis and my experience, I believe, note, the mind can trick us in 100 million ways, but I believe that the sheer fact that I may be sitting in front of that man who is so worried about the demonic nature of New Age reality, yet I am sitting as grounded, centered, Christ-like in my heart. has got to, get the mind ticking. And if I'm truly going to sit in my heart and shut up and feel the frequency between this person who I love so deeply, who stepped out of my reality construct in terms of my belief systems into a very simplified and ancient story of the Bible and Jesus, which many of you may comment and say, well, how many times has the Bible been written? Like, how do we know that that's not this, then the next? And I mean, the Vatican has stolen thousands and thousands and thousands of texts of gnosis, from that which I believe has been stolen. So the gnosis that I'm speaking of is the Christos mission, is, the order of the Blue Rays, the Melchizedeks. And then there was a split. And so we're experiencing the split through each other, and we're experiencing the distortion of religion, and it's just fucking wild. But, if I'm sitting in front of my dear friend who, even though I know, I feel like there is distortion that has happened, I cannot help but come to the most loving space within my heart to look into the soul, the angelic soul of this being, and see that angel. And when I see that in any person, my heart just wants to shine. And it may be an airy-fairy notion that my heart can create such change, but when I'm like that, then my soul essence is going to come through. My avatar Christ itself is going to come through. And I might start channeling. And I might start bringing through my fire letter coding and my sequences. And if I'm doing that and you're reading scripture, in that moment, are we not just honoring each other's differences and sharing an experience in each other's belief systems and allowing and surrendering the other to be deeply in their heart, no matter what distortions you believe may exist in that moment, perceived onto the other by you, and vice versa. It's so interesting because, that the video of the link that I will put below is, there's so much conviction, as you may feel conviction in my share here. And as you may see in many different videos. And we can shut those videos down and go, oh my God, I'm being tested. Like, what's right, what's wrong? And I do believe it is that aspect of coming into your relationship with God. It's time for that now. Like, and this is I'm going to say it. It's fucking weird for me to say. I'm getting more used to it because I'm feeling it more and I'm experiencing it more. And it's not entirely comfortable for me. I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and again, everything created very purposefully, and then abandoned all of that, not because anything wrong happened, not at all. Not at all. I just had interest in Hinduism, and I had interest in, in fairies and elves and mystical and magical things and dolphins and creatures and angels and all of these things. And it just naturally took me into many, many places of research and trying to identify through those things. But I think the true gift is to never lose your individual consciousness, your individualized consciousness. And I feel in these hijacking situations that often occur through psychosis, there's a complete dissolution of that. And I also know those in my family, I mean my Christic family, that have had insanely huge spiritual experiences where the individualized consciousness and identity that is created around that, the persona, is obliterated. I have had that too in some medicine work, but not something I've experienced for longer than an hour. And that hour is eternity. And that hour is so much processing, so much integration, and so much PTSD. And that's just an hour. You know, so there are so many issues or aspects around consent, mind control, distortions, and false ascended master structures, which is what I haven't spoken to much, and it's kind of been highlighted, but it's like, okay, great, now my friend is found solace, peace, and grounding in Jesus and the Bible. My belief system would say, okay, we've had a fragile psyche that's gone through an exorbitant amount of trauma, and then indoctrination to now come into the space of Jesus, which the language is terming as outside of himself. How do we even know that this Jesus is the gestalt of Christ consciousness, the man Yeshua, that I believe is the true ascended master? That you wouldn't even, from that perspective, perceive as a man with a beard and a this and a that with a staff. That's long gone. I mean, that is long gone. This is a gestalt of consciousness that is creating worlds, galaxies, planetary systems, you know. It has exited out of this time matrix and is able to create, not to come down and save the world in the vision of the man, the ideology, the thought construct. And this is how they're created in the fourth dimensional realm. It's this thought construct, collective consciousness that's creating these false identities from my perspective and my understanding. And that's why we call it this astral bliss. So you think you think you've been met by an ascended master, and actually, again, it's why I brought the history in a little bit, and to speak to understanding the distortion based on the genesis of our existence. You kind of got to question, and when you look at the genesis of our existence all the way to the now point, you're just like, holy shit, like, to believe in this man in the sky as a fourth dimensional entity, it's like, bro, consciousness is it's pure creation. Like, there's so much there's just so much. I just want to say thank you. I think I'll move to a bit of a closing here. If you have stuck with me, thank you. You know, these initial videos of me kind of getting back into the swing of things, of recording, particularly longer format, which I'm really grateful for, because I mean, how do you explain any of this in a nice little tweet or a whatever? You just can't. And so first of all, a thank you. And second of all, you know, in these first rounds of developing, rapport, context through the content, kind of takes a bit of time. And I would really encourage you to begin to watch other videos as well that it kind of begins to link themes in, because, you know, if it's the start-stop thing, then this may be a little bit just out there for you. But again, watch the link that I've added below, and no matter where you are, again, please know I have absolute respect. There is no mockery. I believe in the man Yeshua having existed and walked this plane and this earth. I believe he is way much bigger than we can ever possibly perceive. I believe that spiritual text has the absolute propensity to be misperceived and misinterpreted by every single one of us at any point in time. And that brings me to humility for every single one of us. But I do believe in the consciousness of the Christ, an ethos of kind, honorable, caring, empathic, compassionate, responsible, and accountable beings. And that is what I believe that it all comes down to. Truly, truly, truly. So, and to my dear friend, I doubt you'll ever watch this, but to all friends, you know, to summarize, I'm going to say, I believe this aspect has shown me what a fallen angelic is, and how genetically manipulated we can become, because there was a certain bioweaponry so I'm thinking of the right word, bioweaponry moving through the system of this being, which gives me further data to analyze my belief systems around how the shots have affected many starseeds and kind of brought them deeper into distorted fallen angelic programs, structures, and lineages to keep them trapped. So that becomes a reality based on my data accumulation. And as wild, profusely wild, profoundly wild as all of this seems, like I say, I'm tracking the data, and I'm taking it all in, and you know, I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but I believe through my spiritual journey, I have remained grounded. I have gone through death. Oh boy, have I gone through death. My heart has been ripped out and broken, as I have no doubt every heart on the planet has been. And I just come to a space of grace and gratitude for all that is reflected back into my field, for all that disappears and that which may return, as my dear friend has, for more teachings. May we come together in our differences and come into that Christ of kindness, compassion, to listen. And although great change is required within many of us, to be wise enough to know when not to push and when to just be a shining example of a fucking beautiful heart. Simple heart and a smile. So with that, I say I love you, all belief systems included. That which is in alignment will come to me. That which is helpful. And all else as per the beginning of this video I wish not to interact with. I'm sending so much love. Goodbye, everybody. Ciao. Thank you for your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.